Yeah, hi folks. Now Lee from Cross Rubicon did a great video yesterday about Julian Batchelor from Stop Co-Governance, for which he posted a link to one of Julian's videos, which really exposes the government, media and iwi corruption that is going on in New Zealand today. Now today I'm just going to put that video out there for everyone to see. Now it's time for everyone to wake up and get along to one of Julian's events, for which I've posted a link below giving the locations, dates and times, along with a link to Lee's video as well.
Thank you for coming this afternoon. This is fantastic to have you here. All right, so I do a blog every day, and if you want to give us your email and your name and text it to that number, we'll sign you up automatically, make it nice and easy for you. All right, so today, and that's Chris Hipkins, as you know, and this is the leader of the opposition, Mr. Luxon. They have both exhorted New Zealanders to discuss co-governance. So we're here today to discuss this. They've asked us to do this. So let's hear Mr. Hipkins first.
Come over here. Prime Minister, co-governance came up again at Ratana yesterday. You've spoken about confusion about what the term means and that others are misinterpreting it to raise fear. Does the government have some responsibility for that, for not explaining it properly, and what will you do to address that?
Look, as I said yesterday, co-governance can mean different things in different situations. We should have a mature discussion about it, not one that's informed by bumper sticker slogans. We should make sure that we're informing New Zealanders what we're doing and why we're doing it. As I indicated yesterday, the last National Government entered a multitude of co-governance arrangements during their time in office. In fact, some of the co-governance, or some of the examples put forward by the National Party yesterday of initiatives that they support have elements of co-governance within them. So if we think about, kura kaupapa, for example, the wānanga, even whanaora, there's elements of co-governance within that.
Now, I think Mr. Hipkins is not telling the truth. I believe he knows exactly what co-governance is. His government's driving it, and you've just seen an example of political spin, because here's a book that I've written called Co-Governance, What It Is, Why It's Wrong and Why It Must Be Stopped. And in this, I have detailed basically what the Labour government in the last 6 years has been up to, and beyond that as well. But I believe Mr. Hipkins knows exactly what co-governance is, but he's trying to tell the public that he doesn't really know, and he does know. So that's my take on it. All right, let's hear Mr. Luxon, see what he says.
Co-governance has been messily handled and explained by this government because they haven't been upfront on such a big constitutional issue. They haven't taken people with them, and as a consequence, become increasingly divisive across New Zealand.
What do you mean by the conversation has been immature around co-governance?
Well, it has been. It's been immature and divisive because essentially the Prime Minister hasn't come forward, spent her huge political capital making the case to the New Zealand people and taking them with her on it, and then having a decent debate and discussion about it.
So my take is that Mr. Luxon doesn't actually know what co-governance is, because he seems to change every time he talks, and I believe that he needs to come to grips with what co-governance is quickly. New Zealand is at war. Now, I have used that before, and this opening my seminar, and people have been upset about that. You shouldn't be talking about war. War's not a cool thing to be talking about, but I say, hey, you know what, we're in a war. And it's an accurate word to describe what's going on in New Zealand. It's 2023 and New Zealand is at war. This is how Encyclopedia Britannica defines war. It says, war in the popular sense, a conflict between political groups. That's exactly what co-governance is. This is why I'm involved, because I'm running a political lobby group to stop co-governance. And we're fighting the people who are pushing co-governance. And so this is a war. They want it, I don't want it. The war started in 1975 with the passing of the Treaty of Waitangi Act, and then the birth of the Waitangi Tribunal, which has become the biggest racket in New Zealand's political history. Okay, so it's a war of duration. It's been going on since 1975, and it's got magnitude because the whole country is now talking about co-governance. So who are the parties in this war? Well, it's a war between tribal representatives, private tribal companies or elite Maori and the rest of New Zealand. We could say this, sometimes they're called treatyists. Elite Maori or treatyists are a distinct group. They are maybe 1,000 in number. They do not represent all Maori or the vast majority of Kiwis. I have friends who are Maori, and they are as angry about the situation the tribal leaders have created in New Zealand as I am. Tribal leaders are feathering their own nests out of nothing but to further their own self-interest. This is the truth. And if they are not stopped, New Zealand is headed to becoming the Zimbabwe of the South Pacific, because what's going to happen is we've got several tribes in New Zealand. Those tribes, many tribes, those tribes are going to end up jostling for control. Somebody's got to be top dog. That's how it was pre-1840. And there's going to be tribal war. There's going to be tribal conflict. And who's going to be in the middle of all this? All the rest of us who are not in those tribes. So we're heading for a big problem. Remember, there was just something at Eden Park recently. It's a big conflict between the Waikato tribe and the Auckland tribe. This is the rumblings. This is the beginnings of severe problems in New Zealand between tribes. So I'm not talking fiction. We're talking real time. This stuff's happening now. So with whom are we at war, apart from the people I've just named? We're also at war with the media. What do you mean by that? Well, here's the $55 million public interest journalism fund, which is probably one of the most evil pieces of legislation ever to be released in New Zealand by a government. Because it's made our media like North Korea. It's government-controlled media, which should never happen in a democracy. Here's the Titariti framework for news media in New Zealand. These are the actual words from page 3 of the contract media outlets must sign if they want money. The Public Interest Journalism Fund must achieve all of these things. This is what it says in the Titariti framework. You must actively promote the principles of partnership. Now, I'll tell you how this fund got going. When COVID hit New Zealand, media outlets didn't have much money coming in because basically trade stopped. But they had outgoings. They had leases, they had wages, they had other things, ongoing outgoings, which they had to keep paying. So by the end of COVID, they had a debt. And a lot of them had a lot of debt. So the government said, I know what we'll do. We'll catch these guys. We'll trap the whole damn lot of them. So what they did is they set up this fund and they said, if you want some free money, you can have it, but you've got to sign up to this framework. You've got to promote this. You've got to actively promote the principles of partnership in the treaty, and there are none. The second thing they said is you've got to acknowledge Maori as a Titariti partner. So media outlets went like this, oh my goodness, we've got $1 million worth of debt, the government can give us $1 million, get us out of debt. They're not going to say no to that. And so they grabbed it. But on the bottom of the contract it says this, if you want the $1 million, you've got to do all this, you've got to teach these lies, and also if you don't meet a certain threshold, you are going to have to up your threshold or we can recall the money. In other words, it became a loan. That's a trap. The third thing it says in this framework, it says participation and active protection under Titariti o Waitangi, protect 1 and 2 from being attacked or opposed. That's the red writing is my writing, it's not in the contract, I'm just explaining what that means. It means that if you sign up to this and you want some free money, you've got to protect and you've got to stop any of these two being attacked or opposed. So like me, I'm attacking and opposing all this. So you've got to, as a newspaper, a TV station, a radio station, you've got to oppose Julian. You've got to oppose any voice that tries to shut this down. Now, why would you do this? If you were telling the truth, you wouldn't have to worry about all this. If the treaty really taught partnership and it really taught all of this, then you wouldn't need to lie because the treaty would speak for itself. So this is obviously a lie. They've been paid to tell lies. So the contract further states, Maori have never ceded sovereignty to Britain or any other state. This is what you've got to stop being attacked or opposed. You're not allowed to oppose that. Not allowed to say, wait a minute, that's wrong. No, not allowed to do that. If you want money, you've got to go along with this and promote it. Next thing is this means our society has a foundation of institutional racism. You've got to start saying this in your newspaper, your TV station, and your radio station. You've got to start promoting that this is true. And then the next thing is we live in a society that perpetuates racism and inequities. This is what you've got to say. In response, many Maori organisations and networks are decolonising. That's what the newspaper's got to say. We're decolonising because this has been such a terrible thing, having the experience of having Europeans land here in New Zealand. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about colonisation a little bit later on, but not right now. With whom are we at war? Well, we just talked about the media. We're at war with history-ignorant politicians. What do I mean by that? Between 1975 and 2023, what you see in New Zealand is a series of, starting with Bill Rowling in 1975, you see a series of politicians on both sides of the House, of all parties, who just simply rubber-stamped Waitangi tribunal recommendations and paid out huge amounts of money to tribes here and there and everywhere without really investigating the truthfulness or the validity or the veracity of the claims made in that tribunal recommendations. So history-ignorant politicians have got us to co-governance right in 2023. It's their fault. Activists have been working inside the government, and these politicians have gone with them and then supported them and not checked anything they were doing and just felt fearful and intimidated and bullied, and so they've just gone along with it. Who else are we at war with? Government departments, which are now run by activists. Who else are we at war with? Activism in the education system, the brainwashing of young people at kindergarten right up to university. You know what? There is huge brainwashing going on. And why is this brainwashing going on? Forced teaching te reo, bringing in a new history curriculum which is completely telling lies about our history to all the people. Maori were saints and the colonials were demons. That's basically the message. And we want you to be ashamed of if you're a white person and you're a hero if you're a Maori. That's not what the history says at all. And why do they want to do this? Because they want to brainwash this generation so that they don't oppose the coup, the takeover of tribal entities of New Zealand. They want the next generation to be on board and with them. European lawyers and consultants who have sold their soul and our country for filthy lucre. How many read the Herald about 2 days ago when they talked about how much Three Waters had been given to consultants and lawyers to get that across the line? 50 million. Activism in local councils. I have councillors from various councils all over New Zealand writing to me, telling me what's going on in their councils. The Mayor of Kaipara was one where somebody wanted to force a prayer. Why? Why should Maori have the nibs on who should be praying and what should be praying? Look, there's probably 12 different cultures represented. Why don't they all have a turn? Well, that's exactly what Mayor Jepson did. He was just right on. He said nobody should have just the right. No, one person. Why don't we take it in turns? That's what he did. Good man. Another councillor in New Zealand said that he had a 3-day seminar where people like a hit squad came up from Wellington. He was a new councillor, and all the new councillors had to have a cultural safety 3-day seminar. And the people from Wellington who came up were wearing body cams. Why? So they could record who was a bit of a bad, rebellious councillor who could be trouble. This is North Korea. This is happening in New Zealand. And councillors are being subjected to heavy brainwashing and propaganda to conform to the takeover protocols of those from Wellington who are doing this. Christian churches which have become woke and PC, all the while thinking that in running with co-governance they are putting a smile on the face of God. They are not. I'm a Christian. I know what churches do. What churches do is this, is they go, oh, we want to win people to our church, so let's be woke and PC. In actual fact, they're being wimps because they're not really historically savvy. They don't know their history, and they're just joining in, trying to be nice and acceptable to the culture. These are the elements of the war. These are the participants in the war. The laid-back nature of Kiwis whose mantra is, she'll be right, until they taste tribal rule, and then tears will flow in the gutters of our streets. Because tribal rule is not pretty. If you want to know what tribal rule's like, go and have a look and study history pre-1840 in New Zealand. The chiefs, the sensible ones amongst them, came to the British and said, will you protect us because we're self-annihilating and we can't go on like this. Do you know the Maori population in New Zealand went down from 150,000 down to something like 70,000 in those 40 years between 1800 and 1840. And that was not Europeans killing Maori, that was Maori killing Maori. We are fighting for the average Maori and for the 159 other cultures in New Zealand. You see, there are all these people, the Indians and Africans and Chinese and Russians and Czechs and Japanese and there's Samoans and there's French and there's Australians and there's Tongans, there's Germans, there's Croatians, there's Belgians, there's British, there's South Americans, there's Koreans, there's South Africans, Italians, Niueans, and so on. These people are all taxpayers, are they not? Because I'm against any group getting special privilege because what do we call that? Apartheid. That's separatism. That's racism. I'm the guy fighting racism in New Zealand, yet I'm accused of being a racist. So who are we at war with? Well, some people have said, who are these people? Well, Tipene O'Regan is one. He's the Ngāi Tahu leader. So Tipene O'Regan has been known to hint that if the Ngāi Tahu and other claims before the Waitangi Tribunal are not met, there is a danger that Maori activists will resort to violence to achieve their objectives. What's that? That's a statement of war. Here's another one. This is Ken Mayer, leader of the militant Te Ahi Kaha group. He said this: we will take back our country by any means. What do you mean by any means? Any means that will include war if we have to. The Maori Party has clear goals. This is Waititi. He said this: it has a 25-year plan. They want self-management, self-determination and self-governance over all their domains. That means justice, health, education, everything. They want a separate Maori parliament with 15 to 17 seats and control over $20 billion of annual self-managed spending. 20 billion, a billion is 1,000 million. So they want 20,000 million per year. Do you know how much the Dunedin Hospital is going to cost to build it? 1.4. You could get 8 of those into just 10 billion. 8 state-of-the-art hospitals could be built in New Zealand for 10 billion. Do you know how much the road from Warkworth to Puhoi cost? Just under $1 billion. You get another 10 of those roads. Abolishing full and final treaty settlements. This is what he actually said. He said, we want to abolish full and final treaty settlements. They don't want full and final. They want ongoing cash. Handing back all conservation land to Maori. This is Stuart C. Scott, lawyer and historian. He says this: claiming has become an integral part of the Maori way of life. The thought of the extinction of further claiming rights by final settlements is abhorrent to the race. Māoridom does not want settlement. That's what Waititi just said. It wants to nurse its grievances and continue its claiming ad infinitum. That's what Waititi just said he wants. The push by tribal leaders for co-governance and partnership, if not stopped, is going to destroy New Zealand. So what is co-governance? Co-governance, what does it mean for government? 2 complete governments that overlap. This is something that's in my book. It looks like there's 2 governments that overlap. There's going to be a Maori government and a government for everybody else. But the key thing is that Maori are going to have power of veto over the other government. That means power of veto means they have the final say on what goes on in the other government, the non-Maori government. In other words, they get control of the country. A new written constitution based on a new interpretation of the Treaty of Waitangi. At least 5% of all new procurement contracts must now go to Maori businesses. That means that every kind of contract or business transaction down in Wellington, 5% of them have to go to Maori. What do you call that? That's apartheid. All government departments, agencies must now provide a report that show at least 5% of the procurement of goods and services was from Maori businesses. Well, what do we call that? That's apartheid. So this government and co-governance, it's sowing the seeds of apartheid. It's growing apartheid in our country. And why isn't the whole country up in arms about this? Because in the 70s and 80s, we were the country fighting against apartheid, which was all over the place in South Africa. Well, what does it mean for media? Co-governance in the media. Specific guidelines for the media. I've just read some of those out for you. The $55 million Public Interest Journalism Fund, I've just unpacked some of that for you. If media outlets want a slice of this fund, there are strict conditions. I've just read some of them out. You cannot present a point of view that opposes the government's race-based agenda. You're not allowed. News must cover stories that support the government's approved narrative. Maori language and culture are now being forced into government departments, local authorities and state-funded media. Do you know this is a psychological trick to confuse people? They're filling government documents, court documents, every kind of document in the country with all sorts of Maori words so that you can't understand it. That's deliberate so that you don't understand what's going on and then you just go, it's too hard basket and just let it go. That's what they want. This is a deliberate strategy to deceive New Zealand, confuse New Zealanders, and hopefully they'll just go away and let the elite Maori push through with their goals. That's wrong. This is apartheid. What does it mean for dock and land? Transfer ownership and control of the entire conservation estate to tribal authorities. The Department of Conservation has now formed an options development group. This group has made recommendations to give full control and governance to dock to Maori. That means when you go to the ski field, that means when you go to a national park, that means when you go to a beach anywhere that was previously owned by dock, you're going to have to pay an iwi tax. Government rezones privately owned land and gives rights over to Maori. That's exactly what's happened to me. This is not fiction. This is not Walt Disney, mate. This is reality that's happening now. It's happened to me. That's apartheid. What does it mean for education? Rewriting New Zealand's history, skipping the Musket Wars and pre-Maori history, showing pre- and post-European Maori is different from what was observed and recorded by early Europeans, teaching critical race theory. Critical race theory is this: white is bad. Teaching children to be ashamed of being white. Teaching racial bias. Teaching primary school children without Maori ancestors to feel ashamed. What do we call this? Apartheid. What does co-governance mean for health? Two healthcare systems. A Maori healthcare system and it funded by the taxpayer, decision-making and veto rights over the entire health system. In other words, Maori are going to have control over the entire health system. And so this is completely wrong. Maori patients are going to be prioritised. I've already heard about that from nurses. This is apartheid. What does it mean for justice? It means two justice systems: a Maori court system where offenders with a Maori ancestry were treated differently from other offenders. Two jail systems: Maori jails where inmates with a Maori ancestry will be treated differently from other inmates. Western common law now replaced by tikanga, which is Maori customs and practices. People of Maori ancestry will be given a greater legal rights. That's just apartheid. What does it mean for water? Granting Maori rights to all fresh water. Councils pay Maori for water. Listen, water comes from the sky, belongs to everybody. Giving Maori funding to cover all legal costs to claim the seabed and foreshore from mean high tide out to 12 nautical miles. Opponents must find their own legal costs. That's completely wrong. So this is apartheid. What does it mean for local councils? Iwi have decision-making and veto rights. The abolition of the right of local communities to hold a binding referendum on Maori ward seats on councils. Local government minister Mahuta is now undertaking a review and it appears likely to lead to 50% of the council seats being held by Maori. Then they're supposed to be voted on by the people in their electorate. Now they're just being appointed. What's that called? It's called a dictatorship. It's called tribal rule. Is this constitutional? Is this legal what they're up to? No. Well, let's just have a look at this, okay? Let's just see. Or is it a coup? So here's my coup meter, and I believe that there's an attempted coup going on in New Zealand right now. To answer these questions, we have to go back to the Treaty of Waitangi, which has become, rightly or wrongly, the country's founding document. So let's go through this. The treaty makes no mention of partnership or co-governance. That's the first thing. Let me show you. Here is the Littlewood. I'm going to use the Littlewood draft. I'm using the Littlewood draft, which is the final draft in English written by James Busby and William Hobson. It was called as such because this draft was given to a lawyer called Henry Littlewood after the signing ceremony with the chiefs was over. If you want to know what the Maori version says, that's Titiriti, read the Littlewood draft. Okay, so let's have a look at Article 1 of the treaty. It says this: the chiefs of the Confederation of United Tribes and the other chiefs who have not joined the Confederation cede to the Queen of England forever the entire sovereignty of their country. Cede means to give up or give somebody control. Sovereignty means government or complete power to govern a country. Does this article, Article 1, teach, instruct, convey the idea that Maori would be self-determining, having their own government, or that the Queen entered into a partnership with Maori? Yes or no? No. Okay, yes or no. Very good. It's no. The answer is no. All right. So, if we extrapolate out the words cede and sovereignty, this is how Article 1 reads: the chiefs of the Confederation of United Tribes and the other chiefs who have not joined the Confederation give up, that's cede, to the Queen of England forever the entire right to govern that sovereignty of their country. Co-governance, do you get that from that? No. It's impossible. Partnership? No. It's impossible. Sir Apirana Nara, New Zealand's greatest Maori MP, he said this. By the way, he did a law degree in 2 years instead of 3. He was a parliamentarian in the 1920s and 30s. Sometimes he stood in as either the Deputy Prime Minister or the Prime Minister of New Zealand. He was a hotshot. He went around all the maraes in New Zealand teaching about the Treaty of Waitangi, and he wrote this book called the Treaty of Waitangi, an Explanation. So this can be found on page 6. These are but few words. He's talking about what we've just read, Article 1, but they indicate a complete session. This was the transfer by the Maori chiefs to the Queen of England forever of the government of their lands. It is the absolute authority over the Maori people which the article transmits into the hands of the Queen and Parliamentary Council. The main purport, in other words, the main thing in Article 1, was the transferring of the authority of the Maori chiefs for making laws to their respective tribes and sub-tribes under the Treaty of Waitangi to the Queen of England forever. That's a very, very, very good piece of language because it's so clear. He was a lawyer. So he's writing with a little tinge of a lawyer here, and it's great. He then goes on to say, he's not finished, it was the first article of the treaty which transferred the chiefly authority of your ancestors affecting you and future generations forever. This is so clear. The treaty made one law for the Maori and Pākehā, in other words, one law for all. If you think things are wrong, which is what many Maori, elitist Maori think today, things are wrong, and we should be self-governing and we should govern New Zealand and we should have New Zealand back because it was ours. That's all not what Sarapa Rananata is saying. If you think things are wrong and bad, blame our ancestors who gave away their rights in the days when they were very powerful. So for him it's so clear. So let's go to Article 2. The Queen of England confirms and guarantees to the chiefs and the tribes and to all the people of New Zealand the possession of their lands, dwellings and all their property. But the chiefs of the Confederation of United Tribes and the other chiefs grant to the Queen the exclusive right of purchasing such lands as the proprietors thereof may be disposed to sell at such prices as may be agreed upon between them and the person appointed by the Queen to purchase from them. So this is basically saying that the Queen guarantees to the chiefs the protection of their lands, dwellings, and all their property. This section of Article 2 says that to save Maori from being ripped off by settlers with land transactions, that the government wanted to control the sales to protect Maori against being ripped off. That's what it was about. Today, we have something like the Real Estate Agents Authority, which is set up to stop homeowners being ripped off. It's like a government body to monitor real estate agents so that nobody can do anything dodgy with homeowners. The government did the same for Maori with the Treaty of Waitangi. Does this article teach, instruct, convey the idea that Maori would be self-determining, having their own government? Or that the Queen entered into a partnership? Do you get that from that? No. No, you don't. It's impossible. So let's just look at it. Do we get co-governance from Article 2 of the treaty? Answer, no, you don't. Do we get partnership from Article 2 of the treaty? No, we don't. We just do not. Article 2. The Queen of England confirms and guarantees to the chiefs and the tribes and to all the people of New Zealand the possession of their lands and dwellings and all their property. Now I want to show you something here. The word possessions, which comes from the Maori phrase tino rangatiratanga, does not mean chieftainship. Hugh Kāwharu in 1989 did a hit job on the Treaty of Waitangi, and he said this word here means chieftainship. That the government was to give to Maori, or that Maori could retain their chieftainship over their lands, dwellings and all their property. It does not mean that. It simply means ownership. When you read that and you exchange the word possession for ownership, it makes complete sense. The Queen of England confirms and guarantees to the chiefs and the tribes and to all the people of New Zealand the ownership of their lands, dwellings and property. Why does ownership fit naturally and is actually the word that should be in there? Because pre-1840, Maori tribes were stealing from each other land, possessions and dwellings. And the British government said, we will protect your ownership of those things under British law. To interpret possessions as chieftainship would glaringly contradict the preamble and Articles 1 and 3 of the treaty, where it is clear that the chiefs ceded sovereignty. Was it really clear? Come on. Yeah. Was it really clear in Articles 1 and 2 that the chiefs ceded sovereignty, yes or no? Yes. It's really clear. Kafaro is saying that the chiefs did not cede sovereignty. How can he get that? That's just up there with the three little bears and Goldilocks. Historian Mike Butler says this: in the text with 11 footnotes, Kafaro redefined key words to create a treaty in which chiefs only ceded to the governor the right to govern settlers, while they could carry on being chiefs, which is nonsense. And there's the reference. Before the treaty, chieftainship was marked by slavery, infanticide, that's killing children, cannibalism and war. That's what the chiefs were up to. After the treaty was signed, these behaviours dramatically ceased. It was like before the treaty, after the treaty, night and day. This tells us clearly that the chiefs gave up their chieftainship at Waitangi, because if they didn't, all of these behaviours would have kept going. Historian and archivist Phil Parkinson said this: Kafaru's modern mistranslation of Te Tino Rangatiratanga as the unqualified exercise of chieftainship is not merely erroneous, but preposterous. It's fraudulent. And here's the reference. Article 3. In return for the cession of their sovereignty to the Queen, the people of New Zealand shall be protected by the Queen of England, and the rights and privileges of British subjects will be granted to. The treaty is the Treaty in Maori. There was only two differences: was the date, the 4th of February, and the other was the insertion of the word Maori. Now they put the word Maori right there so that it reads, they put that word Maori in the Maori version. This is Hobson and Busby. So it reads like this: in return for the cession of their sovereignty to the Queen, the Maori people of New Zealand shall be protected by the Queen, and the rights and privileges of British subjects will be granted to them. Why was that little word stuck in there? Because the settlers who already were in New Zealand, who'd arrived, were British, and they already had British citizenship, so it was not about them. It's clearly for the Maori. Does this article teach, instruct, convey the idea that Maori would be self-determining, having their own government, or that the Queen entered into a partnership with Maori? Yes or no? The answer is no. So here it is. Co-governance. Do you get co-governance from this anywhere? No. The answer is no. It's impossible interpretation. Do you get partnership from here? Anywhere? No, you don't. Am I the only one thinking like this? No, I'm not. What about good old Winston Peters? He says this. He says, does the treaty mean partnership? It is truly staggering that a claim of partnership for Maori is being made based on the Treaty of Waitangi, when Queen Victoria was not in partnership with anyone in the UK or the British Empire, or the day before, the 6th of February, or the day after. So Winston Peters is really clear. What other figures who are notable would support this? Well, here is Judge Anthony Willey, and he says this. Retired District Court Judge and Canterbury University Law Lecturer Anthony Willey noted this: Maori and the Crown are not partners in any sense of the word. It is constitutionally impossible for the Crown to enter into partnership with any of its subjects. He says you can't do this. It's like legal gymnastics. It just does not work. Then what about David Lange, former Prime Minister, Labour Prime Minister? Did Queen Victoria for a moment think of forming a partnership with a number of signatures, a number of thumbprints, and 500 people? Queen Victoria was not that sort of person. You can have a democratic form of government, or we can have Indigenous sovereignty. They cannot coexist, and we can't have them both. So you've got significant politicians, prime ministers coming out and saying you can't do this. I'll finish with this. Dr. John Robinson says this: many of the activists and iwi intend a totally dual government system with separate Maori and non-Maori houses of parliament, and a Maori veto on all legislation. A Maori veto on all legislation means private tribal companies have the final say on everything that goes on in New Zealand. On what laws and legislation are passed and accepted in both houses of parliament. Dr. John Robertson goes on to say the words in the Hei Puapua report insist that power, full authority, must go to Māori. He goes on to say this, that the proposal of Matiki Mai Aotearoa gives the iwi leadership around 3/4 of the power to rule the entire country, together with a veto on the joint sphere, that's the other quarter. Everyone else will be disenfranchised. If you don't know what that word means, go and look it up in the dictionary. Disenfranchised means stripped of all your rights. This is a blueprint for the complete rule of New Zealand by a determined minority. This is wrong. I believe many Maori would stand with me. If they were in this room today, they'd be clapping and cheering, saying, you're fighting for us, because that's what we are doing. We're fighting for all the 160 cultures in New Zealand. And we're saying the bus called New Zealand is heading for the cliff, and if we all go over it, it's going to be unsurvivable. We've got to stop this. And there's the quote. You can go to where I get this from. Conclusion. A coup by stealth is in progress in New Zealand. Please don't be naive or easily fooled. Co-governance is not about co-governance. Co-governance is code for the takeover of New Zealand by tribal companies and their representatives, the end of democracy, the installation of apartheid and separatism into everyday life, and the final end game being the installation of tribal rule. If you want to summarise my book, that's it. Tribal representatives have openly stated they want to be in complete control of New Zealand by 2040. If we don't stop co-governance, New Zealand is headed to becoming the Zimbabwe of the South Pacific. Now, are you okay with that? So here's our call to action. What's the plan? Repeal all race-based legislation. Launch a royal commission to investigate a trail of Treaty of Waitangi fraud and corruption. Vote for the party which is going to completely outlaw co-governance, not just tinker with it, rearranging the deck chairs. It's got to go completely. We want to stage a peaceful rally in the Auckland domain before the election, 2023. We need a minimum of 100,000 people at that rally. Only a show of solidarity will force our politicians into solid policy legislation commitments to outlaw co-governance. Do you know the only thing that politicians love is votes? They don't care about you or me, they want your vote. And so what's going to get their attention is 100,000 people saying this is wrong. They'll go, oh my goodness, they're serious. And you know 100,000 people could tip the balance of the whole election either way. They will know that. So they're going to run to their policy statements and expunge, is a good word, co-governance. Votes speak most loudly, so only a visible demonstration of voter abhorrence to co-governance will affect real political change. You can sign up on this website, ask all your friends and neighbours to do the same. Here is my book, pick up a pack of these. Awareness is the key to change. The reason New Zealanders are not on the warpath and we don't have mass protests, the reason we don't have is people are not aware. They think co-governance is okay, and the government's done a lot of work to try and create that wrong impression. The best way to stop co-governance is to get the word out to neighbours and friends. Do a letterbox drop in your street. I hope for the next one we have in Auckland or wherever it is around the country that you can encourage your friends and your neighbours and everybody to come, because we've got to get that 100,000 people, all right? Thank you so much for coming.